So first and foremost, thank you for allowing me to come by this afternoon, and Diane, thank you for directly to you for the opportunity. I know you give a bit of a brief overview about Mars, but can I just ask quickly how many people here have actually heard of Mars? And of those, how many know exactly what we do? So therein lies why we're investing a lot of time and effort on our marketing and branding strategy to actually get our communication elements a little bit more in order going forward. But for those that were hoping for something on astronomy and or chocolate bars, I am sorry to disappoint. We will not be touching on either of those. So what I think I might do before I get into the advisory piece, I'll just make sure everyone has some context as to what we do at that large building on the corner of college and university. First and foremost, our mandate is to work with early stage, primarily science and technology entrepreneurial companies, but we also serve a cadre of innovative social purpose businesses. As an organization, our measure of success is purely gauged by the amount of jobs and the amount of wealth being either revenue and or investment capital into these companies. The amount of jobs, the amount of wealth in our portfolio of companies that we're working with. So you fast forward 15, 20 years out, recognizing the long duration of an entrepreneurial venture to grow. However, in 20 to 25 years, if you look back at Mars, and we haven't worked or supported the growth of some material companies as measured by job and or wealth creation, have we failed? Absolutely. So that mindset is very aggressive internally. So we encourage all of our advisors, while maintaining a very inspirational and educational role, the role is to help these companies grow. And if you have to tell someone that this is a bad idea, then absolutely you do that, and hopefully you can inspire and motivate them at the same time to get them back on the horse to do something a little bit different or pivot maybe 90 degrees with their business plan. But if that's our target customer, that is our measure of success, the inevitable next question to put this into full context is, well, what exactly do you do to help these companies grow? And we have 5 core services within Mars. Our advisory services group, which is synonymous with our mentorship practice. And I'll spend most of the time today talking about that. But we do offer a suite of other services for our entrepreneurs. We have a whole suite of educational programs, both online and in person. We have a fully equipped market research group. So if you're an early stage entrepreneur, you have some gaps in your business plan and you want to understand the landscape of the theater community in the GTA, doing that research in Google is one thing, but being able to find already trusted sources that have done that research, produce a report, would be hugely valuable for you to get your hands on, especially when you can get it provided to you from Mars for free. Now that's an example in the creative community. We don't have a lot of databases that have to work specifically to theater, but again, our target market is science and technology. We have a whole suite of capital programs. So our friends from the ministry would know that we administer some programs through the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. We also have a provincial pool of capital where we make investments into early stage companies to help them grow. And quite excitedly, we'll be launching a few other funds. Again, really addressing that capital gap for when early stage businesses need to get started. They might need $50K, they might need $500,000, they might need $2 or $3 million. They need a place to go. And so we have some pools of capital that we work to administer. And in addition to that, we work fairly rigorously to get connected with individuals, angels, high net worth individuals, to introduce them to high quality deal flow in our portfolio, trying to connect these two, citing, here's a great investment opportunity, a stock buy before it gets publicly traded, and here's a great team, a great idea, a great business that you want to invest in to help move it forward. And then the last pillar we're getting into, and we're still at the strategic planning phase, is recruiting. And many of you can relate to this, whereby you have an early stage company, you're growing, you've gotten a little bit of traction, a little bit of sales. You might want to recruit some dedicated resources, be they full-time or part-time, to look after sales or partnerships or finance or something along those lines. Writing a job description. How do you compensate them without money? What are recognition and retention strategies? That's on the demand side for the entrepreneurial ventures. But on the supply side, coming into Mars every day, we have individuals who might be retired, might be looking for an alternative career option, citing, here's my resume. If you have a company that is this size, that needs somebody with my skills, that's willing to pay me a modest base salary, I'd be willing to sit on the board and open up my Rolodex because I'm either retired and bored and looking for something to do, or I'm really not having fun in my existing job. So we're going to spend a lot of time working to connect kind of the demand and the supply side. So that's an aggregate. When someone asks, well, what does Mars do? I hope you remember advisory and mentorship, education, market research, capital, and then the talent piece. There's many more other things I could speak about, but commercial real estate is probably not that exciting to most of you, so I won't talk about the physical building. And we do administer a whole suite of other, what I think are quite unique and interesting programs. But the focus of today is on our mentorship and advisory group. It's what we commonly define internally as our core engine room. It's one of those things that if we don't get it right, the model becomes very problematic. So let me walk you through a bit of the process, and then I wrote down about 6 or 7 key lessons learned about our mentorship model that you might find very relevant, and I'm really curious, Alan, if we could get their feedback, given the workshop that you've done, if these are the same things that you've gone through.
So you're asking the group to write lots of notes of what you're saying?
No, please don't do that, no. So again, we serve early stage entrepreneurial clients. We have about 1,100 clients in our portfolio right now that we serve. We have about 110 advisors. And again, I'm going to use the term advisor synonymous with mentor. About 110 advisors in our portfolio of record. And the rationale why I use that, about 80 to 90 of our advisors are volunteers from primarily the GTA by virtue of geography. However, their employment status is irrelevant. If you're a full-time, part-time, or volunteer, you have the exact same job description. Your job is to work with an early stage venture, do a lot of listening, understand their goals, provide unbiased advice, coaching, in many instances parenting, to these early stage companies and help them move their business forward. That is fundamentally, I think of it as much like your program here, a client-consultant relationship. The impetus as to why we created this program 3 years ago was purely, well, maybe 3.5 years ago now, was purely one of capacity challenges. Again, Mars, albeit a huge infrastructure and soon to be 1.5 million square feet of urban innovation center, although it's a large physical presence, that is commercial real estate, our actual staff is quite small and lean, and we couldn't afford, nor did it make sense to try to hire a bunch of full-time dedicated resources. So we embarked about 3.5 years ago, and a lot of the learnings I gathered were from MIT down in the US in Cambridge. They had a volunteer mentoring program, and I was asked to participate in a workshop as to what the strategy would be for academic institutions to engage their alumni to mentor and coach students going through their engineering program. And they had already been doing it for a couple of years prior, but a lot of learnings came out of that some of it we transposed here. So as I said, the context around doing this is one purely of capacity, and out of that grew a whole series of interesting learnings as to how do you make it work. So procedurally, we grow our volunteer mentor program only one way, only via referral. You cannot be a volunteer mentor at Mars if you have not been referred into the program by someone that we trust and or is a current volunteer, part of our network, but you need to have that referral. And the rationale behind that is one of what we call quality management. And what you might find quite comical, but happens all the time. If you wanted to recommend, and you're an existing volunteer at Mars, and you see a gap whereby we need somebody with skills either in the theater or the music, whatever industry it is, because you're fairly familiar, you might say, hey, Don, there's somebody in my network that I'd like to refer into the program. By virtue of your integration with the program already, we would trust you and do a very rudimentary, borderline perfunctory interview with that individual. If they have the skills and the gaps that match a need to our clients, we would bring them on board because we trust you. And what we do is we would ask you, are you absolutely sure you want to make this referral? And you might say yes. I said so much so that if we have a problem with that individual from a client complaint or some community perception that they're not doing something right, would you be able to sit and tell them and kick them out? Because I don't want to have to deal with it. I want you to have to deal with that part. And what's interesting, 50% of the suggested referrals from existing volunteers, when you sit down and say, do you want to be accountable for their performance? Do you know them that well? 50% of them say, well, you know what, not really. I met them at a dinner party. I don't know if I could stand up and vouch for their performance. So what that has resulted in is the quality of mentors. And as I said, we only have about 80 to 90 over 3.5 years. It's the slowest growing volunteer mentorship program that I've ever seen. But the rationale behind that is we're adamant around quality. We've had 580 people apply. I've turned down 500 people because I don't feel that there's an opportunity that meets their needs. So the worst thing you can do is onboard someone essentially for reasons of great expertise, great ability to contribute back, but what they want to do and what they're excited about, we don't have any companies in our portfolio at this stage, so I don't want to misalign expectations and go through the fanfare of onboarding. And you take a best guess, but you err on the side of let's not do this and sell them on something, and then when they arrive, it's a very different product. So we're very clear on that. A lot of times too, we'll ask individuals that have been referred to the program, do you actually have a meaningful amount of time to contribute? And we have a benchmark that we ask all of our volunteer advisors to set aside somewhere between 8 and 12 hours per month. If you can't do that, it might be problematic. Why? Because I'm sure many of you are here who are getting mentored. You develop a pretty tight bond with your mentor. It's tough to describe, actually. And how frustrating is it if you have built a great relationship after 3 or 4 months, you realize that person is a consultant, they travel Monday to Friday, never return your calls, and are gone for 6 months. It's very problematic, and the client complaints come to yours truly. So we ask, if you can't set aside for a full minimum of a year, 8 to 12 hours per month, it's going to get very problematic. Now, there are creative ways to make that work if we know going into it, but for the most part, because our main mandate is ensuring that the clients are satisfied with the volunteers that have been referred into the program and are working together, there has to be some sort of client continuity. Otherwise, the program gets to be a bit problematic. The other element, in terms of the rationale as to why referral model works really well, is when you go through the process of interviewing them, you can ask very, very clear questions. Because you're referred in, you have a common bond. Oh, you're friends with so-and-so, so am I, they've been part of the program. And you can quickly delineate as to what are your core reasons as to why you want to be here. And I just want to make sure and re-emphasize that it's for volunteerism, philanthropic contribution back to the community. Is there any other element to this program that interests you? And very often, once you get that kind of collegial bond in a 30, 40-minute discussion, they might identify saying, well, to be honest with you, I'm hoping to do a little bit of volunteer mentorship with a couple of clients in this space because I'm an independent consultant and I'm trying to build my pipelines. I'm hoping to convert them into paying clients in a short period of time. Again, interviewed 580 potential volunteer recruits, only 80 have gotten in because, again, you can see a whole series of these questions as to, why might not it work. So that whole concept around a referral model leading to accountability, good quality, the other people who refer them in are actually responsible. They're their coach during the whole program. We don't have time to do that, so we were really focused on that piece. A couple other interesting learnings. For those that are relatively, I don't know if everyone was onboarded at the same time, but one thing that we have learned is one of the critical success factors, especially for new mentors, is the onboarding. You have a bit of an interview process, you're welcomed into the program, then what happens? One of the main reasons why most volunteer advisory or volunteer mentorship programs fail, new mentors get on board, they're excited, they can't wait, they've allocated 8 to 10 hours per month, they got a year lined up, their family is committed, their job is committed, sometimes they get supported financially from their current employer to do so. They start and then their phone doesn't ring. Week, 2, 3, 6, 8 weeks go by. And we've had this problem with a handful of mentors that have kind of slipped through the cracks that they don't know what to do. They were sold this great onboarding presentation. We make our advisors take an oath. The referring partner has to take an oath. We celebrate. It's a big deal because these people are willing to support our mandate to grow our business at zero cost. So the first probably 2 to 3 weeks are absolutely critical in our world, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts during the Q&A, as to once you're on board and sold and checkered flag, do you get paired up with your team right away? Do you attend a couple of meetings? Do you have to do a few networking events? It can be a shadow just to get a feel for it to ensure that you really do like it, because many of our mentors have never mentored in their life. They're tried and true entrepreneurs. They're people from similar industries that know the IT world or the clean tech world, life sciences world. Great business acumen, great credentials, but they get nervous and they don't know how to mentor and they're afraid to answer questions. And we get a lot of questions around, should I mortgage my house? Should I quit my job? Should I drop out of school? And they clam up and they don't know what to do. So you have to be very clear that when you do this onboarding, that you set the right expectations as to this is what the next 4 to 6 weeks would look like. And we've spent a fair bit of time really ensuring that engine, the moment you're celebrated, that you know what at least your next 4 to 6 weeks will look like. And it might not involve any meetings. It might be a deferral to another session. There's a couple philosophical things that we have internally. We have a huge attempt at a policy for what we call team-based mentorship. So every client, and most of our early stage entrepreneurial ventures, 85% of the clients that come into Mars, 85% are pre-revenue, pre-capital. So they're not making any money, and they don't have any investment company put into their company, maybe their own credit cards and things like that. So these are 2 or 3 individuals, small companies, 85%. So we have a philosophy around team-based advisory. And why do we do that? Well, our volunteer advisory pool has something called the rule of a third. And it's something that we made up. I'm not very creative in the naming world. I'm a pretty good guitar player, but I'm a terrible creative naming person. But we maintain a rule of a third, and there's a lot of reasons for this. But the rule of third is as follows. A third of our volunteer mentors at any given point have to be tried and true current or former C-level executives in major companies. Phenomenal business acumen and exceptional Rolodexes. The second third have to be tried and true, proven grassroots entrepreneurs. Someone who can sit down across from a client and say, I have been there. I have lived in a basement, I've had no money, I've had to grow a company, I've lost big, I've done equity investments, whatever it is. They have to have that credibility and credential. And the final third are subject matter experts. Someone who might never have been a C-level exec, someone who might never have been an entrepreneur, but they have some functional or sectoral levels of expertise that are exceptional. Why do we do that? Well, if you as an entrepreneur come in, how great would it be from a client satisfaction perspective that I could sit down and introduce somebody who's either existing or currently in your, currently is in your industry that's a C-level exec, exceptional Rolodex, exceptional business acumen that can help make networks and give you just general businesses. Second person can say, well, you know what, I know exactly what you're talking about. You can't do what he or she is describing because you got to worry about your first reference customer or get more testimonials or whatever it is. And then maybe you have a marketing need. Well, you don't really care what the credentials of this person is from an operating perspective. You just care that they know marketing. And if it's social media marketing, using LinkedIn or whatever various tools, how great is it from a client satisfaction perspective that you can have connections to all these individuals concurrently? Physically, they can all show up in the same meeting. Logistics usually dictate that volunteers can't make that happen. But you have this team where you can kind of pull and connect and rely on other people. We found that team-based mentorship works very well. The practicalities of it actually happening all at the same time around the same table at the same moment is tough. But the other benefit to that is a lot of the advisors want to network with people with diverse backgrounds. So if you do the one-on-one mentorship model, our mentors declare they don't know everything. And in fact, it's actually quite comical. A lot of them go, I'm working with an entrepreneur in my space, and I thought I knew a lot about this, but I don't. I need connections into the international market, or I need connections into another province in this sector. I need to get connected to them. So if everyone were just entrepreneurs, or if everyone were just C-level execs, or God forbid, if everyone were just subject matter experts, it would be problematic. So we spend a lot of time understanding our clients and their needs and say, okay, it's a team-based model, or if it's one-on-one, what would the other pieces of the pie need to look like from a mentorship program in order to help these people succeed? 2 other quick things, and I'll be quick. Retention. How do you ensure that volunteers stay excited and engaged? What are the different mechanisms to do that? We have, and nor will we ever, pay for our volunteers, and even more interestingly, we don't cover any expenses. They park at the Mars Center, 20-some odd bucks a day, they eat it. We're pretty candid with that. Now, there's exceptions for group-based activities, so if I want one of our volunteer advisors, and by the way, something of interest, all of our volunteers at Mars have Mars business cards, Mars email addresses, full access to the facility. They are, in fact, Mars employees. We just don't pay them, and they're not on site that often. Simple as that. But one of the things we don't do is no money. We pride ourselves on the fact that we have yet to pay any cent to any volunteer, and if the minute you do, I guarantee you there's a ton of examples, especially in North America. The minute you start paying one of your volunteers, you've set a precedent and it will implode. And anyone who tells you otherwise, I'd like to see the data that would suggest it. So what do we do? Well, something you might think about, as your companies, those who are the entrepreneurs in this group, as you're building your companies, there's a refreshed website, which I think is actually a great opportunity. You got to celebrate the success. And you know what you do? You do what we do. I don't know, I'm not telling you what we do, but what we've done has worked fairly well, is we do rudimentary press releases. Company A has landed their first customer. Every press release that's related to a client's success that has a volunteer advisor or mentor working with them, that volunteer mentor gets their quote in the press release. And volunteer mentors love the eminence, love the recognition, love the association with a successful milestone achievement. Number one reason when we survey our advisors, why do you really like doing this? 1, they like to give something back. 2, they love to network. 3, they are really jazzed about innovation. 4, they love the recognition in the community amongst their peers. And they're not shy about it. But it's the 4th reason, which is great. So if it was number 1, then you wonder about their motives as to why they're doing this. And then the very last thing, administration. One of the biggest lessons learned that we had, and I made a mistake on this when we initially rolled it out, is you have to gather data, you have to ensure that advisors are uploading and providing information just for general management of the program. You've got to watch out for that fine line between, I'm a volunteer, I'm doing this because I want to do it. The minute you make it an administrative burden, saying I got to fill out weekly reports on everything that I've done this week with the client, is that the right way? Not sure. Every program is a little bit different. But we're trying to use I'll call it a Twitter-esque update, whereby all the advisors that are working on an advisory team, 140 characters, not literally, but it's close to 140 characters. Whenever you have a connection point with that client, we need you to update that client record on the MARS system. Why? Team-based advisory, we need visibility. If you write down, hey, client so-and-so needs someone, everyone can see that. And we only have 80 advisors or mentors at this point now, but we're hoping to grow that to 200. And when you get to 200, if you don't have some sort of social media way of communicating among all the mentors, it becomes problematic to efficiently and expeditiously answer the questions that you might have that your client wants to try to get resolved. So we're going to go to a bit of a portal right now. We did a soft launch before the holiday, and we got some great feedback, and we're going to do a relaunch based on some improvements over the next probably month. So that's a general summation of our program, and I put it in the context of lessons learned just because I actually pulled an audible the minute I arrived here, and I just changed the way that I'd approach it. But that's how we're doing. Again, it's the slowest growing one I know, but it's working well from a quality perspective. And our client satisfaction, as a closing remark, we always get asked by our board, how do you know your clients are happy with your volunteers? How do you measure that? And the best question I have seen asked to the clients, would you recommend the volunteer advisory program to other entrepreneurs in your community? And across our 1,100 companies, we're trending at about an 88% rate of our clients would recommend our volunteer mentorship program to other entrepreneurs. And what's interesting about that, and from an operational perspective, the feedback that we get from the clients that complain about us, saying, those mentors don't know anything about my business, ridiculous advice, meaning we told them that we thought they had a bad idea, or a bad business model, they need to pivot. They still rate us fairly high, because at least we're honest, giving unbiased advice, and trying to help them grow, create jobs, create wealth, and give them a livelihood. So that's something that is the best way to measure success that we've found from an advisory. Okay, I am really done now. So, thank you.